who are thirsty, all who are weak, come to the fountain. Dip your heart in the stream of life. Let the pain
Now speak, and may we hear the word of God. Amen. I'm unashamedly going to duck out of the complicated bits from today's readings and focus on the last two verses from the Gospel, which are familiar ones to us all. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. However, I do not think there is anything easy in these two verses either. Yes, they sound very comforting, and yes, they are the verses that adorn the arch in the chancel of our church building. They contain verses I've often repeated as a mantra when stressed or tired. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. But I do not believe that this is an easy instruction from Jesus. Back in February, I acknowledged how I needed to take some time out to reconnect with my own saltiness, that which brings zest to my life, my own personal relationship with Jesus, which I couldn't do whilst running a busy church. In conversation with one member of the congregation after the service, we reflected on the importance of Sabbath and taking time out to rest. So I had 4 weeks off, but did I rest? I went on holiday, but a Welsh cabin in Storm Dennis was not very restful. I went to Spain to volunteer at a retreat house, so spent the week working and avoiding rest. Then I went on retreat in Devon and finally crashed when somebody pointed out I was on the verge of burnout. Diagnosing the problem was helpful, but it does not fix it. My spiritual guide suggested I needed a further 3 months off, and I started to sweat a little bit about coming back. I arrived back in the parish still in turmoil and was launched into the confusion of mixed messages about COVID-19. No peace, no wine, no coffee, and eventually no church. And you know what? I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I could stop. But I did not stop. Suddenly, there were new technologies to learn, new channels of communication to establish, new ways of meeting to master. What is Zoom? Certainly, its name is not restful. Most activities continued online. So where was this rest that Jesus was talking about? Perhaps, like me, you also saw a massive increase in stuff demanding your attention. Daily briefings from the government and diocese, a bombardment of electronic resources. I've done online training and webinars on a variety of topics, from Facebook groups to safeguarding, leadership in crisis to theological reflection. I've watched theatre performances, done online wine tasting, baked, gardened and tidied like the rest of you, and yet I still feel I am missing something. I find myself craving rest. Paradoxically, rest is a verb or doing word, referring to how one ceases work or movement in order to relax, sleep or recover strength. However, rest is also something to be based on, depend on. So perhaps it's the latter to which Jesus is referring. Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I will give you rest. In the midst of all the busyness of life, here is Jesus offering an alternative way. Yet it's not easy. I am not good at stopping. I like to have things to do or to plan for. One of the things I struggled with most at the beginning of lockdown was the absence of things to look forward to. I then tried to overcompensate by creating long lists of things to do that I never normally have the time for, most of which remain incomplete. I find it difficult to relax, and I rarely sleep well. So this rest has to be something else. Lockdown has been a wake-up call for many things. A wake-up call in terms of the environment. We've seen it flourish as we've given traffic and travel a break. A wake-up call in terms of what the church is about, as we've shifted from a less building-orientated organisation to one based on discipleship, mission and pastoral care. A wake-up call in terms of priorities, as we have identified who or what is most important to us. In these Bible verses today, Jesus is inviting us to put him at the top of his priority list. Come to me. Jesus is suggesting that if we put him first, all the other stuff will follow. It's a standard joke that the answer to all Sunday school questions is Jesus. But it's true. The answer to everything we are craving is simply Jesus. When life throws you a curveball, like illness or redundancy, bereavement, or even a global pandemic, there is an opportunity to reflect and reassess, and maybe that's what Jesus is inviting us to do today. When Jesus says, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest," he's offering us a personal invitation to turn to him and be in his presence, especially if we feel weary and heavy burdened in life, to come to lay those burdens on him. I've shed a lot of tears recently and spent a lot of time talking to others about bereavement. I found that the overwhelming sadness and confusion I have encountered in my own personal life has been parallel to the challenges and complexities of lockdown. The time out that I took in early spring was not enough to process everything. So during lockdown, God has given me a further gift of time and space. I have been more intentional about creating sacred space and taken advantage of retreats offered online. So when Jesus continues saying, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me," I've been reminded of his time in the wilderness, when he needed to take time out to focus on his calling and the mission that God was preparing him for. So despite the busyness of the last 3 months, they've also been immensely creative and stimulating, as I have discovered a God who is willing to sit with me in my pain when no one else can. Sometimes I use the Sacred Space app, and one of the prayer activities is to imagine Jesus sitting at the end of the bed and to chat with him. Often I don't have the words, but that's okay. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. The yoke of an ox is simply about submitting to the will of the farmer. Just spending time in God's presence without conversation has been enough. Sometimes we strive too much. Sometimes we fill ourselves up with words or activity. The phrase "less is more" is also true. Lockdown has been a breathing space for me to rest with God, and I know that I need to do it more. One piece of advice I read recently was, through the veil of burnout, find out who you are, surrender, because when you do, you will discover your best days await your arrival. Through these two familiar yet difficult verses, Jesus is calling us to surrender to him. Surrendering is a very difficult thing to do. The phrase let go and let God is one I still find difficult, even after weeks of trying. But I know that when I do give in and allow God to minister to me, I find the comfort that these two verses promise. There is also an echo of this within our Romans passage. St. Paul was acutely aware of the inner conflict that surrendering or yielding to the will of God provides, rather than the temptations of the world. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing that I hate. Come unto me, give way to me, give it all over to me. Stop. This is not just a personal invitation to us, but a call to our church, our community and world. When we offer the whole of life over to God in prayer, then we find rest for our souls. That's what drinking from the living water feels like, a never-ending resource that is humble and gentle. Jesus does not insist or cajole. He stands arms wide open, waiting. For my yoke is easy. It's not a heavy request. Come to me. It is light, for it is where our true souls reside, at home with God. I'd like to finish with a poem that we gave everyone as an invitation at my dad's funeral, and it's written by his friend Dennis Wrigley as part of the Maranatha community, and I did put it on the notice sheet for you to look at again. He says, come to me, come with your heavy load, come with your tiredness, come with all your guilt, come with your regrets, come with your hearts, your bruises and your pain. Come close to me. Feel my embrace, my breath upon your life. Come as you are now. Allow my heart to beat within you. Come, see my outstretched arms. Come, end my waiting. Come home to me.
Cries out to